Hello, welcome to Loremaster's Lair. I'm your Loremaster, here today for another God video. Last week I looked into Cheliax, so it should not surprise anyone that today we are going with the highest authority in hell himself, Asmodeus, the god of contracts, pride, slavery, and tyranny. Without further ado, let's get started. So to start out, let's look at where you too can find information on the one who declares himself the one true God. First, the basics can be found in Gods and Magic, both the 1E and 2E affairs. The full scope of his magnificence came to light in Book 5 of the City of Thieves adventure path, titled The Mother of Flies. It was released again in the book Inner Sea Gods. And just to have a duplicate, there was of course the Book of the Damned, both the individual book series and the complete core books. Considering how many evil deities we have full write-ups on, we are going to become friendly with these books if I run out of main and minor deities. The further fine print can be found in Faiths of Corruption and within Divine Anthology. All of hell is depicted in Plane of Adventures. Finally, there is going to be a short addendum dealing with Starfinder that you should take note of. Don't want to overlook anything, right? Stories, mostly told by his followers, tell of how Asmodeus was one of the first beings in existence, along with his brother Eus. The two worked together to craft the universe and the first mortals to serve them. And the universe was as it should be. However, Eus became too attached to the lesser beings and began insisting on giving mortals free will. Asmodeus would not have it, and the heavens were split in two between those who believed in free will and those who wished to protect the perfect order. However, the brothers decided to come together and try to talk out the differences. At least, that is what Asmodeus wished his brother to think. Instead, Asmodeus slew his brother. But though the battle was won, Asmodeus decided to surrender the point, allowing free will to exist in the universe out of remembrance for his brother. At least, for now. In art, Asmodeus usually appears as the stereotypical devil. Red skin, horns, hoofs, cloaked in flames, the whole set. That said, his appearance tends to be, we'll call it flexible. And thousands of interpretations have come and gone over years, based on the preferences of mortals. The one constant is always being a tyrant. While the devil form is said to be his real one, there are whispers of a form much more monstrous, with open, bleeding wounds. One other constant found across his various interpretations is his love of red gemstones, most often rubies, and he will often appear wielding weapons, armor, or maybe a simple pendant made of the gemstone. So what is Asmodeus' domain? Well, according to his followers, everything. But more important, he is a deity who creates hierarchies, allowing all those in the universe to know their proper place. The weak must always serve the strong, and he helps decide which is which. He expects utter obedience from all. He does not give his followers magic simply because they worship him, but because they work to ensure everyone worships him, like they should. He is a god who watches over deals, making sure each side keeps to their end of the bargain. However, his favorites are unfair deals, those where the wise outwit the editor's dullness and gains the lion's share of the benefit. He does not usually deal with humans directly, because they are weak, if but useful. However, he does enjoy those who follow his teachings to the letter. Rising above the masses, and exerting their own iron will on all those who stand below them. Now, if we are being actually honest, I have to this point presented Asmodeus as he presents himself. But honestly, the guy's a tyrant. Who would actually devote themselves to him? Well, first, power-hungry priests, diabolists, slavers, nobles, and worst of all, lawyers. Disclaimer, my day job is a lawyer. Those who are ruthless as Asmodeus and see him as a rubber stamp on their own evils. But there are also the common people, like in Cheliax. People remember how much the Civil War sucked. And elsewhere, there are bandits and mobs and chaos. They see Asmodeus and his endless order as harsh, but also as the lesser of two evils, which often is the way the devil gets in. Either way, to worship Asmodeus is to be ambitious, to try to reach the highest position possible. After all, they are well aware that to be complacent is to be used or to be torn down. Which brings us to today's first side tangent, the part of the show where we do read the finest of prints. Today we have one of the strongest parts of, well, any Diabolist worship, infernal contracts. These are a go-to method of exchange in hell. Simply a devil will give you what you want, in exchange for your soul being condemned to hell, or some more long-range plot. Which brings up some important points of infernal contracts. Infernal contracts can be simple, or they can be as complicated as possible. The intent being for devils to get what they want, and therefore crafted in a way that traps the mortal signing, as long as the bargain is successfully completed, of course. In addition, souls that are condemned to hell through their own actions often are not given options of contracts, them having nothing worth the bargain, which is why the Thurns are so proud of being thrice damned. They have enough leverage to make multiple diabolic contracts. There is rarely a loophole left open to void a contract, but there are standards outside of explicit escape clauses. Therefore, your only bet is usually if all copies of the contracts are destroyed, a rare occurrence because one copy is always kept in the vaults of hell. Analogy to Asmodeus is slightly different depending on where it is practiced. Well, not truly, but Cheliax and places where the faith is banned are obviously going to practice different. In Cheliax, they are in the faith is in charge, separate from the Thurns, but still a wave which dominates. They want to keep the common people in line. Oh, and torture. They're really good at torture. Outside of Cheliax, they work with those in positions of power, slowly corrupting them as whispers in their ears until Asmodeus is controlling another tyrant behind the scenes. Though they do take on the role of judges in lawless lands and hunt demons, so some can be considered neutral-ish, in appearance anyway. The typical day for a priest is to take and give orders along a hierarchy, because there is always someone above you, even if it is Asmodeus himself. Churches dedicated to Asmodeus tend to be Gothic buildings, rising up over the cities. They tend to double as buildings of administration, just how Asmodeus favors it, or at least it is so in Cheliax. Elsewhere where the worship of Asmodeus is not as public, they are underground, in hidden rooms and basements. Decorations vary from silk and gold to black metal altars in the deep darkness. Asmodeus prefers straight loyalty, but trappings of wealth are a good way to keep devotion of the greediest of mortals. Asmodeus' shrines are usually not easy to find by sight. Rocks or trees of odd markings, statues of hated rulers. It is a place any follower of Asmodeus is able to find, through pure feeling. A recognition the darkness inside is being matched outside. Asmodeus' realm, well, is hell. However, he split into 9 rings, and keeps the centermost, the 9th, for himself. Nessus, as it is called, looks like a realm of Elysium, after it has been turned to bits. The description actually uses the word Holocaust to assess the damage. The earth is split, volcanoes constantly spew lava, the roads are paved with skulls. Mountains have been carved into temples after temples, devoted to the Prince of Darkness. Below the streets is Asmodeus' Court, a fancy name for workhouses where slaves continuously toil in Asmodeus' name, which also double as libraries, laboratories, and an altar. For public meetings, he sits upon a throne floating above a massive pit, the anger of hell contained within. When he wishes to be alone, his own private domain is that of catafalque, where no other creature has ever seen the inside of. Now we get to the part of the show where we look at other information on the faith. First, the center of his worship is, of course, in Cheliax, and neighboring Isgar and Nadal. Asmodeus does not really have holidays per se, as every day is his. The closest would be leap year, as it is an extra day in the year to proclaim his glory. Of course, Cheliax does have various holidays in his name, but they are mostly for themselves in his name only, which works just fine to him. His holy book is the Asmodian Monograph, an incredibly simplified version of the original book. This shortened, abridged version is only 1,000 pages and covers contracts, propaganda, diplomacy, history, and anything else the Diabolist would find useful. It is common among his faithful priests to determine which is the dominant one by quoting obscure passages at each other. The most obscure, the higher in the hierarchy. Which brings us to side tangent 2. As per usual, they are all clumped at the end. And as per usual, we are getting the Divine Anthology and another Divine Fighting Style. The book, Wrath and Punishment, is only as old as the end of the Cheliax Civil War, but those in Cheliax treat it as if it is one of the oldest fighting styles in history. Rewriting history will do that to you. The book mostly only is found in Hell Knight bases outside of Cheliax, but the fighting style, Asmodeus' mandate, sees plenty of use. It teaches one to use the heavy mace to give such a mighty blow that it sickens the opponent. And with enough training, allows one to get in a free, dirty trick after landing a solid hit. Finally, let's look at the relationship between Asmodeus and others. First, looking at his servitors, we have Fristax. Close enough. A red imp, but one who has made history as being part of multiple diabolic incursions. He plays the fool, but whispers in ears brilliant ideas, and convincing them that they're their own plans. There is our own, the Arshenson, a jet black pit fiend who is not much for conversation, but is a strategic mastermind. He is known for his possession of the artifact known as the Arshenson, a unique orb of law, which also spreads darkness and quenches fire. And Asmodeus' herald is currently, Basilius, a creature who matches all Asmodeus' requirements by being a handmade, angel-like automaton. When he walks in a material plane, he takes on the nightmarish form of the greatest terror of the age. As for other gods, Asmodeus has, and will, work with any deity he believes to uphold the end of the bargain. He has even worked with Shaelin, Nephthys, Gorm, and Iomade herself. Some good deities might be reluctant, but he knows how to convince them to work for the greater good with the lesser of two evils, the devil. Closest to him, however, are the ranks of hell. The Marmalocs, the Infernal Dukes, and, our third side tangent for today, Archdevils. Archdevils are the strongest of the devils. This includes Asmodeus, though he is granted special authority and stands as the only one among them who is a full deity. I will not be going into them in depth, since we have full write-ups for all 8 of them. But with them all together, I can tell you how each received their position. The devils started with the war in heaven, where they were expelled and cast into hell, which at the time was controlled by Vostok, Asuras, and Titans. The 6 generals who fell at the time were Beelzebul, Belial, Dispater, Mammon, Moloch, and of course, Typhon. You remember Typhon, right? I bet you did not know all 6 of them were former Celestials. Anyway, a pitched war began between the new and the old, and it was deadlocked, until an Asura by the name of Grion turned on his own kind, bringing Hell victory and Grion a promotion. At this point, Asmodeus divided Hell between them all. Typhon got the first, Dispater the second, Mammon the third, Belial the fourth, Grion the fifth, Moloch the sixth, Beelzebul the seventh, and Asmodeus the ninth. As for the 8th, Asmodeus tore the consciousness of Hell itself in the ground, the same kind of being as the voice of the Maelstrom, and what some suspect the eldest known as Ning is, and turned it into the first true devil, and one of Asmodeus' most loyal lieutenants, Mephistopheles. That said, Typhon was slain by the ephemeral lord Regathiel, which led to him being replaced by Barbatos, who is not a devil, and no one knows what he actually is, and no one wants to ask. Altogether, an interesting set of individuals who rule the underworld. Do you not think so? So now, let's end off with our 4th side tangent, a look at Starfinder. How is Hell doing post-Gap? Not well, actually. You see, the events known as the Gap do not only mess with people's memories of the period, but anything that gives information on that period. This includes writings like contracts. Hell just woke up one day to find many of the contracts illegible and therefore voided. Asmodeus has been working to rectify the situation, but for the time being, Hell is just going to need some time to fully recover. While there are planets which do worship Asmodeus, he still lacks the power he once had, and any talk of him being a major deity at this point would just be false. And that is all for this week. So now that I have finished Asmodeus, next up is Hell itself, correct? Yeah, that would have made sense. But no, again, hard focusing on the self-version Avastan at this point, and actually doing that Plains video would have made too much sense. Same with next week's video not being around the time of Nether God. Whatever, we're fine. We're good. Either way, come back next week where we look at another place where Asmodeus has some open worship, even if their deity slightly overshadows him. See you then.